they come to Australia, a land of opportunity, seeking a brighter future. They are African women, resilient and strong, carrying the hopes of their families on their shoulders. They work tirelessly, often in demanding jobs, to provide for their loved ones. But behind their smiles and unwavering strength lies a hidden struggle, a silent epidemic of burnout and fatigue. Many African women in Australia find themselves caught in a relentless cycle of work and family obligations. The weight of these expectations, coupled with the challenges of adapting to a new culture, can take a toll on their well-being. Across Australia, in bustling cities and quiet suburbs, African women are silently battling burnout. They work long hours, often in physically and emotionally demanding jobs, such as healthcare, disability and aged care sectors. They return home exhausted, only to face a mountain of domestic responsibilities. The demands on their time and energy are relentless. Many work double jobs, night shifts, disrupting their sleep patterns and leaving them physically and emotionally drained. This relentless pace of life takes a toll on their health and well-being. Many suffer from chronic fatigue, sleep deprivation and stress. The lack of support networks in a new country exacerbates these challenges. Life is hard in Australia. Living standards are too high. The alarm clock blares at 4 p.m., a harsh start to another long night. Amina Deng, a young mother of 5, rises from her restless sleep. She has been working night shift at the local hospital for the past 3 years. A wave of guilt washes over her as she glances at Cholo, sound asleep beside her. As she prepares for work, packing her lunch and ironing her uniform, she feels the weight of their agreement. The children are still asleep as she kisses their foreheads goodbye. As she drives to work, Amina Deng whispers a prayer for strength to get through another night. The fluorescent lights of the hospital buzz overhead, a constant reminder of the long night ahead. Amina Deng moves through her shift with practiced efficiency, her smile a mask for the exhaustion that gnaws at her. She checks vitals, dispenses medication, and offers words of comfort to anxious patients. Each hour that passes is a battle against her weary body and mind. Her thoughts drift to her children, wondering if they finished their homework, if they had their dinner, if they miss her. She pushes the thoughts away, focusing on the task at hand, on being the reliable, capable nurse her colleagues have come to depend on. Her break is a stolen moment of quiet in the bustling hospital cafeteria. She calls home, her heart lifting at the sound of her youngest children, Abuk's excited chatter and Choli's sleepy murmurs. Deng assures her that everything is fine, that the children are fed and ready for bed. The drive home is a blur. Exhaustion clouds Amina's senses, her eyelids heavy, her limbs leaden. She pulls into the driveway, the first rays of dawn painting the sky with hues of pink and orange. Another night shift survived. She steps out of the car, the cool morning air a shock to her system. As she reaches the front door, she can hear the muffled sounds of her children's laughter inside. A smile touches her lips. Soon, she will be able to hold them, to tell them she loves them. But as she fumbles with her keys, a wave of dizziness overcomes her. She stumbles into the house, her legs giving way beneath her. Amina felt asleep on couches, asleep she never wake up to see her children again. This is a toll of fatigued African women are going through, the unseen struggles, the silent burnout. Amina Deng's story, while tragically cut short, is a stark reminder of the silent epidemic plaguing many African women in Australia. The relentless pressure to fulfill multiple roles, coupled with the cultural expectation of stoicism, often leaves them carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, their own needs pushed aside. Many suffer in silence, their struggles hidden behind a veil of normalcy. They are conditioned to be strong, to persevere, to never show weakness. They fear judgment, stigma, and the shame of admitting they can't cope. This silence, however, comes at a cost. The constant stress, the lack of sleep, the emotional toll of juggling multiple responsibilities take their toll on their mental and physical health. Depression, anxiety, and chronic fatigue are common among these women, yet many suffer in silence, their cries for help going unheard. The lack of culturally appropriate mental health services further exacerbates the problem. The impact of this silent epidemic extends beyond the individual woman. It ripples through families, communities, and society as a whole. Children grow up witnessing their mother's exhaustion, their fathers seemingly oblivious to the immense pressure their partners face. The burden of care often falls on young shoulders, robbing them of their childhood and forcing them to grow up too quickly. The lack of open communication and understanding within families can lead to resentment, conflict, and a breakdown in relationships. Women may feel trapped, their voices stifled, their needs ignored. They may internalize their pain, leading to feelings of worthlessness and despair. The cultural expectation for men to be providers often translates into a lack of involvement in domestic duties and childcare. This lack of awareness and understanding perpetuates a cycle of inequality and silent suffering. The tragedy of Amina Deng's death, while shocking, is not an isolated incident. It is a stark reminder of the urgent need for greater awareness and support for African women in Australia who are struggling with burnout, fatigue, and mental health issues. We must break the silence surrounding these issues and create a space for open and honest conversations. We must challenge cultural norms that perpetuate gender inequality and place unrealistic expectations on women. And we must provide culturally appropriate support services that address the unique needs of African women. This is not just a women's issue. It's a societal issue that requires a collective effort to address. By working together, we can ensure that no woman suffers in silence, that no family has to endure the pain of a preventable tragedy. The heartbreaking reality of Amina's story, and countless others like hers, is reflected in stark statistical data. Studies reveal that African migrant women in Australia experience significantly higher rates of psychological distress and depression compared to their male counterparts and the general Australian population. One study published in the Australian and New Zealand Journal of Psychiatry found that over 40% of African women reported experiencing high levels of psychological distress, more than double the rate for Australian-born women. These figures highlight the disproportionate burden of mental health challenges faced by this community. Furthermore, research conducted by the University of Melbourne revealed that African women in Australia are more likely to report experiencing discrimination and racism, both within their workplaces and in wider society. This experience of prejudice and social isolation further exacerbate their vulnerability to mental health issues, compounding the stress and pressure they already face. These numbers paint a clear picture. The mental health of African women in Australia is in crisis. The women we see are incredibly resilient, but they are stretched incredibly thin, says Dr. Adeola Olukbosun. They are holding down demanding jobs, often working double jobs, night shifts, while also managing household and childcare responsibilities. Community leaders like Ms. Aisha, Baha, echo these observations. We hear stories of exhaustion, of feeling overwhelmed, of struggling to cope. These voices highlighted the urgent need for culturally sensitive mental health services. We need to create safe spaces where women feel comfortable sharing their struggles. These initiatives, driven by passion and empathy, are creating ripples of change. The call for action resonates throughout the African-Australian community. Women are bravely sharing their stories, demanding to be heard, urging for change. They are advocating for greater awareness, for increased funding, for culturally appropriate mental health services, and for a societal shift that recognizes and values their contributions. We are not asking for pity, we are asking for support, says Ms. Fatoumata Diallo, a young mother and advocate for African women's mental health. We are asking for understanding, for recognition of the invisible burdens we carry. We are asking for a future where our daughters don't have to suffer in silence, where their mental well-being is prioritized, where their strength is celebrated, and where their sacrifices are never taken for granted. The plea is clear, the need is urgent. It's time for Australia to listen, to act, and to create a future where every African woman feels seen, heard, and supported. The first step towards addressing any issue is acknowledging its existence. The plight of African women in Australia, burdened by societal expectations and battling silent burnout, is finally receiving the attention it deserves. Across the nation, seeds of change are being sown, initiatives are taking root, and hope is beginning to blossom. Community organizations, led by the very women who understand these struggles firsthand, are at the forefront of this movement. Support groups like the one spearheaded by Aisha Ba are providing safe spaces for women to connect, share their experiences, and access culturally sensitive counseling services. Moreover, there's a growing recognition of the need for culturally appropriate mental health services. Initiatives like the African Australian Mental Health Network are working tirelessly to bridge the gap between mainstream healthcare providers and the unique needs of this community. They offer training programs to increase cultural competency among healthcare professionals and advocate for policies that prioritize mental well-being within the African Australian community. While the challenges are undeniable, the spirit of resilience and the unwavering determination within the African Australian community fuel the journey towards a brighter horizon. There's a growing movement advocating for systemic changes, pushing for policies that promote work-life balance, affordable childcare options, and accessible mental health services for all. Drawing inspiration from successful models in other countries with similar demographics, Australia can learn from best practices and adapt them to suit its context. Imagine a future where African women in Australia are empowered to thrive, not just survive. A future where their contributions are celebrated, their voices are heard, and their well-being is prioritized. This vision can become a reality with sustained effort, collaboration, and a commitment to creating a more just and equitable Australia for all. It's time to move beyond awareness to action, to transform empathy into tangible support, and to weave a future where every African woman feels seen, valued, and empowered to reach her full potential. We've journeyed through the lives of African women in Australia, uncovering the often unseen burdens they carry. We've witnessed their tireless efforts and silent struggles with burnout and fatigue. Now, it's time to move beyond awareness to action. This isn't just about recognizing a problem, It's about actively working towards a solution. It's about challenging the status quo and creating a society that values well-being and diversity. The journey towards a brighter future begins with breaking the silence surrounding mental health within the African-Australian community. Challenge the stigma, encourage open conversations, and create safe spaces for sharing struggles without fear of judgment. Invest in culturally appropriate services, ensuring language barriers and stigma don't prevent support. Empower community organizations with resources to expand their impact. Building bridges of understanding and empathy is critical. Let's not forget the incredible strength and resilience of African women in Australia. They are the backbone of their families, and their contributions enrich Australian society. Their stories show their determination to overcome adversity and their hope for a brighter future. It's time to honor their strength and support their well-being. Their strength deserves our support, and their future deserves our dedication. Written and spoken by Majok Wutchok, Perth, Western Australia.